So we'll talk about rules, and I'd love to hear about whatever weird rules you can think up that you might want to have other people around you follow. Not that you want to impose these rules on society at large, because having things done by a government where people didn't really agree can be really messy, like vice laws and stuff like that. Some rules we all agree with, that things like, murder, theft, rape, we know that we probably all agree on these things. We have to define what those are in some cases. Even like with theft, what things are okay to borrow or not without permission. Because some people who are thieves claim they're borrowing something, but they weren't authorized to borrow it and it wasn't theirs. So you have to be really clear on what's community property and what community owns what, and rules about how it gets used, so that we don't have conflict over the sharing of resources. Sharing resources is inherently a difficulty. Now we'll talk about one rule in particular, and that's smoking. You can tell me what you think about this. I want to have a rule of no smoking. And so anybody coming in understands that's the rule on the property. And I have had that rule before, and I've had guests who broke it, and then I started breaking it, and then it all fell apart. And I wasn't willing to enforce at the level of saying, no, you really can't do that. And it's part of the thing we agreed to. You agreed to this before you even showed up here. And even though you're a cute chick, that rule still applies to you. The biggest rule breakers are usually cute chicks because they don't think anything applies to them. They're very entitled and do whatever the fuck they want right in front of you. And they're like, I dare you to stop me. And they're used to being so valuable that they don't get kicked out right away for that kind of shit. They're not treated like men. And they should, in that regard, be treated like men. Like, we shouldn't have a lot of gender-specific exceptions. Like, yeah, so with smoking, for example, the reason I want it to be illegal by consensual agreement is that it results in people having unnecessary health problems, and I want to invest in people for the long term. I don't want them to have health problems that then the community ends up having to pay for, maybe not directly, but if we have unhealthy people eating unhealthy food, doing unhealthy things, then that creates a cost for the community. I mean, that's why I don't want people doing really dangerous shit. I just don't want to do that. There's no medical services nearby at all, and we do need to improve our own medical services and everything. But with this particular one, I don't see an upside. I see it as a cost. I've grown tobacco before. I've smoked tobacco I've grown, and it was terrible because I don't know how to grow tobacco right or cure it and stuff. And I have a funny video of me making faces while I'm, trying to roll a tobacco joint thing and stuff. Another minor reason I don't like smoking, it's kind of big actually, is I used to have a lot of parties, and I would set up two smoking areas, one in back of the house and one in front of the house. And I would have ashtrays there. And somehow the smokers still managed to drop their butts on the ground. And this was a relatively higher quality class of people than your average person in the public. They were selected to be invited. They were, I was happy to invite them into my home. But they disrespected my home by not using the smoking areas I set up really well. I even had a case where I had a whole bunch of people invade my party, a whole bunch of foreigners came in, and they all knew each other, and they're just world partier people, don't give a fuck about anything. They're rich and young, and I remember one time I was sitting on the couch at that party, and I was kind of just a little bit in shock, not in shock, but surprised by the turn that this party took that I was not planning for, since one single person made one single phone call to their group of foreigner friends, and what they do is they decide that there's a party they like, and then they all descend upon it. And it was fun. It was neat to have a bunch of new people at the party, but I did not invite that woman back to the party because she broke a rule that wasn't written, which is limit how many people you invite to the party. And that's definitely something I want to care about, is how people get invited into any space I create, and nobody comes in without being filtered. One of those filters, no smoking. Now, does that mean nobody's going to sneak a smoke? yeah, some people will look at those rules and they'll be like, I'm just going to sneak some cigarettes in and I'll smoke them anyway. Why would you have a rule that people are going to break? Well, just like the rules against murder, theft, and rape, people are going to figure out how to break that in some way, or they're going to have, rape is a really tricky issue. It's not cut and dried, Some people think any heterosexual sex is rape. I mean, it's a very badly defined word, so we're going to have to break that down into subsections of definitions. This one's pretty simple. Now, could somebody use nicotine pills? Yeah, that's not included in smoking. Sure they could. And the rules actually against tobacco smoking, the rule about marijuana is actually following whatever is the existing law, not getting us into legal problems. And so, to some degree, we do have to follow the law that the government provides us with. And there's going to be times where, in certain cases, we call the police. When you look at something like the Catholic Church, they allow rape to occur, and they don't report it to the police because they're better and more important than government because they live in God's land or something. And apparently child abuse and rape are considered okay, and they'll just move a priest around rather than do what they should do, and that's turn it over to the actual authorities to enforce the law. All this shit's really complex, and we can study every legal system that's ever existed or any rule set that's ever existed anywhere in the world, whether it was created by a business, a community, a government, a culture, cultural law, what's socially okay or not, how are people socially punished for something in some cases, but they're not actually punished by the system. Like if somebody's just kind of being an asshole, too loud, too drunk, it could be that there isn't a societal response to that at the formal level, but that people will then say, you're an asshole. You're being an asshole, knock the fuck off. And say that in a really nice and productive way, not, like I say it. And hopefully those rules, the existence of those rules, actually support greater levels of freedom, greater levels of prosperity. Because wouldn't you want to live in a community where people are eating healthy food and aren't just bringing in shitty products all the time that make people sick or are a waste of money? Do some communities, and this is one of the reasons I like the idea of multiple communities with different rules, so you can experiment with them, kind of like in the U.S., different states have different laws, and that allows them to experiment. Different communities could have different cultural rules, some of which are enforced at various levels, and those would fit with the kind of people who wanted to join that community. That makes sense, doesn't it? And seriously, comment on whatever weird rule you could think up that might make sense or not to have either be a social rule, just an agreement among friends, or one that's actually enforced by the community. Because I don't want to have a ton of rules, but it's been a joke in the past when people have visited that I have a bunch of rules, that I have any rules at all. Because some people will think, well, just have no rules. Have everybody just agree that they'll be good people. And it's like, that's not good enough. It's not going to work. Our definition of what a good person is not shared. And we're evolved to seek things for ourselves and to have other people follow the rule while we break it. That's why we should be very suspicious of any authority system over any community. So when I talk about having different, organizations like trusts and nonprofits owning pieces of land and then having an overarching thing that handles the main roads and shared resources and things like that, we have to make sure those systems are controlled in ways that people cannot be corrupt within them. They cannot use their authority to steal. Nobody should be making money off of everybody else just because they're in a special position. Civil servants should be servants. And they shouldn't be rich people making money off of it. That should be true in society at large, in my opinion. So, good luck with rules and shit.